Good evening. I'm Jean Ensminger, Professor of Anthropology and Division Chair for the Humanities and Social Sciences at Caltech. I'm very happy to welcome you this evening to the Ernest C. Watson Lecture Series. And before I introduce tonight's speaker, I've been asked to remind you of the next lecture in this series. And it will be by Paul Patterson from Biology. The title is, Can One Make a Mouse Model of Mental Illness and Why Try? This will be on May 17th, the last in the series. It's my great pleasure this evening to introduce to you Preston McAfee. Preston is the J. Stanley Johnson Professor of Business, Economics, and Management at Caltech, and he's also Executive Officer for the Social Sciences. In January 2004, just 2 years ago, we pulled something of a coup in the economics world by recruiting Preston McAfee in a fierce competition that pitted us, among others, against the Chicago Business School. He told me at the time that one of the major attractions for him of Caltech was the opportunity to teach and work with our extraordinary undergraduates. Believe it or not, in the rarefied world of publish or perish, this is something one rarely hears during a faculty recruitment visit. But as one who shares the passion for our undergraduates, I was delighted. And Preston has been true to his word. Since his arrival, he has galvanized our relatively new major in business, economics, and management here, which in its few short years of existence has already become the largest second major at Caltech. In addition to advising the business club, Preston teaches the undergraduate Introduction to Economics. And just to give you a taste of how Preston approaches his commitment to students, when he sat down his first summer here to prepare lectures for his introductory economics course, he became immensely frustrated that no intro textbooks in economics were sufficiently challenging for our very special students. And furthermore, they cost $100 or more, and they were just bad. So he announced to me one afternoon, I'm going to write my own. And I must admit, I was a bit skeptical. We were talking about midsummer, and the course was going on the very next year. Not only did he succeed in doing this in a few short months, but he distributed it free on the internet to the entire economics profession and, of course, to our students. While Caltech appreciates these efforts enormously, we didn't hire Preston for his reputation as an inspiring teacher. Preston began his career as a pure theorist. Read mathematics here in economics. His sterling credentials in this most elite branch of economics, with over 70 articles and 3 books published, earned him membership in the Econometric Society, arguably the top honor in economics short of the Nobel. He was also tapped to edit the American Economic Review, the leading economics journal. This is a distinction that placed him in the position of having to reject over 2,000 scholarly papers of his peers in the course of his 9-year tenure. Having generated that many enemies across the full spectrum of the economics profession, it's quite a testament that so many departments were still eager to recruit him. By the time Preston reached Caltech, he had turned his attention away from pure theory and towards some of the most successful applications of it in the history of economics. He is an expert on pricing, which you will hear about tonight. He has often consulted for the government on mergers and auctions. He was the FTC's chief economic expert on the Exxon-Mobil BP Arco merger, the biggest merger ever proposed. He helped design the Airwaves Spectrum auction that raised $20 billion with a B dollars, and he's testified before Congress on 3 occasions. I continue to marvel at his boundless energy and generous nature. Please help me welcome Preston McAfee.
Well, my ears are burning. Thank you very much, Jean. Let's talk about price. Also, BP Arco, ExxonMobil, 2 separate mergers. Let's talk about pricing. Actually, let me clear up one thing. People ask me, why did you leave the University of Texas and come here? And this is part of the reason. This is an email that was sent out by the people who run the University of Texas. And you don't get that kind of email here. Okay, I want to start out with what is arguably the most trite insight that there is in pricing, something that ought to be obvious to the most casual observer, which is it's a better strategy to offer rewards for your best customers than to try to take away the customers from your rivals. So that is, offer a loyalty discount. And the reason is very simple. If you start stealing your rivals' customers, they're going to turn around and try to steal your customers. Moreover, they're going to cut their prices as a way of holding on to their best customers. And this insight, it's a very trite insight. The airlines have gotten this right. They give frequent flyer discounts. And a frequent flyer discount is a discount to your best customers. This is a trite insight. You'd think nobody's going to get this wrong. It's too obvious. But in fact, the cell phone companies regularly get this wrong. And so here's Verizon. In order to get a discount from Verizon, you have to be a new customer, not an old customer. And then they're surprised when 25% of their customers don't sign up each year. So this is something where even the academic way of saying this is that the fruit is low on the tree. Even though it's an obvious insight and one that ought to be pretty clear, it hasn't been obvious to our own cell phone companies. T-Mobile makes the same mistake. Singular is neutral. All discounts are available to everyone, existing customers or new customers. And Sprint has discounts which you have to be a customer for 18 months to qualify. So among the cell phone companies, only Sprint gets it right. While I'm kicking Verizon for making this mistake, let me kick them for one other mistake. So they advertised for what, 3 years? Can you hear me now? These annoying ads that you hear over and over and over again. So here's a quote to the CEO. Why in the world would you, the customer, think that your cell phone's going to work in your house? Well, maybe it's because you ran 3 years of ads saying, can you hear me now? Yes, we hear you. Okay, a couple of other insights of the same kind of nature. That is, relatively basic first principle sorts of insights. If you reward your sales force on the quantity that they sell, their incentive is to offer discounts. At least if they have that authority, their incentive is to offer discounts in order to sell more, because you're rewarding them on the basis of quantity. So as a consequence, it's a better thing to do to reward them on the basis of profits rather than quantity. That will actually motivate them to do the right thing, which is to try to make as much money for the company as they can. Another thing that's a sort of basic point is that if they're going to give a price cut to a particular customer, and much of what I'm going to talk about today is when do you give price cuts, if they're going to offer a price cut to a particular customer, there ought to be a loss in quality or a loss in functionality to go with it. A couple of other points. If you're going to offer different prices to different customers, make the prices difficult to compare, because otherwise the ones getting the high price are going to be annoyed. This is a pretty good account of why it is that it's very hard to understand telephone prices, and something on the order of 10% have plans where there's another plan that's actually just strictly better, and why the pricing seems so arcane. Because this is Caltech, I'm going to put one formula up. I'm only going to put one up. Everything else will be pictures. This is the monopoly pricing formula, and it's the basis for much of the analysis of pricing. And what it says in words is that your price ought to be a markup on marginal cost, and the size of that markup is larger the more price insensitive your customers are. The less the customers care about price, the larger your price should be. This seems pretty basic, but in fact, this formula has caused an immense amount of loss of profits to companies, because they said, oh, they looked at the formula, they said, that makes sense, let's mark up our costs, let's mark them up 50%. But that's not what the formula says at all. What the formula says is mark up based on the customer's demand. And so as a result, what you actually ought to aim to do is have different prices for different customers. And that's what I want to turn to next. So the question is, how do I offer different prices to different customers? How do I discount based on the price sensitivity, or what the economists in their jargony way call elasticity? And there are two major methods. Oops. So economists call the different methods of charging different customers different prices price discrimination. Nobody likes discrimination, so not surprisingly, the businesses engaged in price discrimination don't want it called that, and they call it value-based pricing. That means look at the customer, try to figure out what their value is, and charge them what it's worth to them. So, the basic idea of direct price discrimination is look at the customer, find out something about them, and have prices that are tailored to that particular customer. So one example of this is the student or the senior citizens discount at the movies. They give you $1 off for the same seat. It's the exact same product that's offered. They give you $1 off based on whether you're young or old. Zone pricing is something that the gasoline companies do, and what zone pricing means is different stations in different geographic areas charge different prices. So if you live in San Marino, the gas station, and we're going to see some gas station prices in San Marino, if you live in San Marino, the prices are higher than if you live in Arcadia. And they do that because the demand is less price sensitive in San Marino than it is in Arcadia. But the basic problem with this, from the company's perspective, is arbitrage. And the customer can drive to the station that has a lower price if they're willing to do that. And so that's arbitrage. And one of the questions is how can the companies get around the arbitrage problem? And that leads us to indirect price discrimination. Now, I can't actually see anybody in the audience, but I need an indication of how many of you clip coupons. So oh, that's good. So let's have, yes, I clip coupons and use them at the grocery store, and no, I don't. Okay, so those who have their hands up second, you can turn the lights back down. Those who have their hands up second are agreeing to pay more. The company has said, we charge two prices. One's a price with a coupon. It's 50 cents less than the price without the coupon. Your choice. Do you want to pay 50 cents more or not? Now, to make this work, of course, they have to make the coupon kind of unpleasant we'd all adopt the coupons if they just made it say, you know, at the checkout, you say, do you want the low price or the high price? And you say, oh, I'll take the high price. So to make this work, they have to make the coupons unpleasant to clip. So if you've always wondered why, when you open the newspaper, first the thing falls out and scatters all over the floor, and then it's hard to read. It has to be hard to read in order to work, because otherwise everybody or too many people would bring the coupons. So coupons are conditioning on the value of time and also a certain amount of the orneriness, I'm not going to put up and pay the higher price. They offer a discount to people who are willing to do work to get that lowered price. Those people tend to be the more price sensitive, on average. So if you are rich and you clip coupons, you've actually foiled the company. As you'll see later, if you're clipping coupons, you're also doing a service to the rest of us. Quantity discounts are the same thing. They're based on a quantity discount, so you go to Sam's Club, you can get 48 rolls of paper towels, all shrink wrapped into one bundle, put it in the back of your SUV. Make a special trip just to buy 48 rolls of paper towels. Who buys 48 rolls of paper towels? Well, it's not a dink that is dual income, no kids. It's who live in a small apartment in Manhattan. It's somebody who's got a family of 4 who are spilling things constantly. And those people, because a family of 4, they've got lots of things to spend money on, they tend to be more price sensitive. So a quantity discount works insofar as the people who want to buy like you don't see a quantity discount on Kalamata olives. But you will see, buy 1 gallon of milk, get the second gallon free. Because, you know, again, if you're dual income, no kids, that second gallon of milk goes bad before you drink it. In fact, even the first gallon of milk probably goes bad. Economists have the jargony name of self-selection. The consumer is agreeing to pay the higher price, and that's a voluntary choice of the consumer. That is, we make all the prices available to everyone, and then you choose whether or not you're going to pay the higher price. And this is about as fun as pricing gets, as you will see in just a minute. Okay, so let me talk about Dell. I picked this, I needed a memory chip for a Dell PC. So I go on the Dell website, and the first thing Dell asks you is, are you a large business? Are you the government? Are you an educational institute? Are you a small business? Or are you a home computer? And so you could select one of those, and then you go and find out what the product you want to buy, and they quote you a price. Most people then at that point either buy it or not, but what they don't think about doing is erasing their cookies and seeing what happens if I give a different answer. Well, here's what happens. They have different prices for everybody. And this is just purely based on, well, so to qualify for the government, you have to actually, they make you actually work to qualify for the government. But notice that that's not the low price. The government would have actually been better off to claim to be a small business to get the lower price. The large business pays the most. And you kind of wonder about this. So this isn't what happens, so this is what happened when I first started. Here's what happens later, 2 months later. Today, as of last month, they've actually narrowed the gap a little bit. Actually, one thing I want to point out here is, notice that the price of memory has been falling pretty dramatically, and yet 2 months later, these prices went up. Why? Because what happened there was, essentially, this is a part that no one else was selling at this point except for Dell, because it only plugs into Dell computers. The world had moved on, and they're saying, well, if you want memory now, we've got you over a barrel. Actually, the peak in prices went over $500, and then today they are back down to $300 for large businesses and $269 for the small. So you think, well, what is this? Do they actually, in the end, verify whether you're a small business or not? No. Here's what Dell says. Each segment selects its own pricing, and the customer's free to pick the one that's cheapest. Okay, this isn't the only time that happens. This is conditioning based on customer information. Savvy customers know to search. Or savvy customers, or customers with a lot of time on their hands, when they're not clipping coupons, they're actually checking the Dell website. Here's another one that you should actually try yourself the next time you're going to a hotel. You call up, you say, I want a room for the night. How much is it? They say, $250. And if you at that moment say, do you have a better rate? The answer is always yes. And you say, what is it? And they say, well, we have a corporate rate. Are you a member? Do you work for a corporation? Have you bought something from a corporation? It's $10 off. We have a university rate. For some reason, the university rate comes with champagne. Go figure. And for years, AT&T had a Wall Street Journal rate. If you called up to get AT&T long distance and you said, I would like the rate that I read about in the Wall Street Journal, they had a special rate just for you, and it was actually substantially less than their regular rate. And this is based on the idea that people who are reading the Wall Street Journal are probably more savvy customers. Let's offer them a discount. So it's not based on that they have a lower income, because they sure don't. But it's based on they are savvier customers on average. They're the ones who are going to go to our rivals. We need to offer them a discount. And one way to do that is just to tell them, ask for the Wall Street Journal rate when you call us. And people who don't read the Wall Street Journal won't know about it. There are not that many of them. Okay, let's talk about another example of this. I put more than one example up, but I'm only going to talk about the IBM laser printer. So in 1989, Hewlett-Packard came out with the HP 2P, which was the first consumer-oriented laser printer. IBM was selling its laser printer, I should really say trademark up here, because if it's got a capital P, IBM claims it's their copyrighted term. IBM sold and no space, I guess. That makes it the IBM term. IBM sold its laser printer for $3,600, and it printed 10 pages per minute. The Hewlett-Packard HP 2P sold for almost exactly half that amount, and it printed half the speed of the IBM, 5 pages per minute. Well, this was threatening to run away with the market, because there were a whole bunch of people who didn't need the speed that IBM offered. As a result, IBM introduced the IBM Laser Printer E, which looked like their regular printer. This is the best picture I can find of their regular printer. Here, I have this cat tool. Let me use it here. So this is the IBM the regular laser printer. Here's the IBM Laser Printer E, and it's kind of hard to tell in this picture, but they are physically identical on the outside. They're not physically identical on the inside. There's only one major difference. In the IBM laser printer E, there are 7 extra chips that do nothing but slow it down. So instructions come down, they reach these chips, the chip holds the instruction, it ticks a clock, a couple of milliseconds, and it passes the instruction on down the pike. And the effect of that was to slow it from 10 pages per minute to 5 pages per minute. It's otherwise the identical machine. Why do they do this? Well, it would be equivalent to so if I have 2 models of refrigerator, I got a refrigerator that's a beautiful stainless steel refrigerator, and I got this other one that's hail damaged. Only the way I made the hail damaged one is I hired a guy, gave him a ball-peen hammer, and had him hit on it a few times so that I could sell it at a cheaper price. That's the story of the IBM Laser Printer E. We're going to offer both printers to the customer. The only difference is one's faster than the other, and the thing that's curious about it is the way I make the fast one is that's the regular one, and the slow one is just a damaged unit of the fast one. This is more common than you'd have expected. Here's another example. If you look closely here, this remote control has kind of an odd button up here. And the reason for that is that Sharp sold this is a DVD player. It sold 2 versions of the DVD player which look identical, and the only difference is the remote, and the only difference on the remote is this one button. It's present on one of the controls and not on the other. What that button does is allow you to play European DVDs on your US DVD player, but what's a riot about this is that somebody figured out, the way they actually suppressed that feature was they just covered up the button. So you can cut a hole, the button is under there, and get access to the feature. We call those, people who study these call them damaged goods for sort of obvious reasons. And this is a way of offering, it's sort of like the reason coupons have to be unpleasant to cut out is because otherwise they won't justify the price discount. Well, here, this thing has to offer fewer features, and it's just the way we make it offer fewer features. With a coupon, it's the same food. The only difference is you got a lower price. Here, it's not exactly the same thing. You have to cut a hole in the remote to make it be the same, but otherwise, all they've done is cover up one of the features. I want to put in a plug for my book. While I'm doing that, so there's 2 versions of this. There's a hardback for $100, and there's a paperback for $25. It costs them more to manufacture the paperback. Did you know this? It would be cheaper to manufacture only the hardback and sell it for $25, but there's some audience out there, libraries mostly, who'll pay $100 for the hardback, and meanwhile you can buy it for $25, which makes me happy. So Gene mentioned that I came here. When I came here, I actually had to sell a house in Austin, Texas, and buy a house here, and in the process, I did some commuting. And one of the things that I did was I flew in on Monday morning and flew back Thursday night for a whole term. And that meant I had to buy a lot of round-trip airline tickets. And this is real data from my trip here, from my moving here. So one of the things I could do is do the kind of logical thing, which is buy a round-trip ticket that flies from Austin to Los Angeles on Monday, flies back on Thursday, flies again the following Monday, flies back on Thursday. That'd be the sort of sensible thing to do. That's not what I did. What I did was I bought one ticket that flew from Austin to Los Angeles on a Monday and flew back not the next Thursday, but the Thursday after that. And meanwhile, I bought a ticket that flew from Los Angeles to Austin on a Thursday and then flew back the following Monday. That way, both tickets span Saturday night. And here's the difference in prices. If you buy the round-trip tickets that don't span Saturday night at that time, $2,200. If you buy the way I did it, $420. Now, I don't know how many times you've done this. If you ever have to fly one way, it's at least 50% of the time it's cheaper to just throw away one of the coupons, the return trip. Buy a round-trip ticket and only fly one way. That's a damaged good, right? This is also a damaged good. A Saturday night, these 2 tickets involve exactly the same airline seats. The only difference in them is the way that I booked them. So they involve the same airline seats, but it's as if by rearranging it to stay Saturday night, I get the coupon rate, which is 1/5 of the regular rate. So I got into this, into researching this, primarily because my wife said, you've been working on pricing for 20 years. how do airline prices work? I mean, I knew to do this, but it was very bizarre. So I started collecting data. I need to not show that picture. So let me show you what the theory looks like first. This is the basic idea. There are hundreds of published papers on this. The basic idea of the theory of airline prices is this. So here's the takeoff point at at the far right. And each one of these prices, each one of these paths reflects what the price ought to be if there were a particular number of seats left. So this one that's really steep here is 1 seat left. So if on the day that, well, you can't actually see it here, but if a year in advance they've sold all but one of the seats, that would be the price. And here's what the price if there were 2 seats left, and the price if there were 3 seats left, and so on. And so for each number of remaining seats, there's a different price path that depends on how many days before the flight. And what's showing in pink is a sample path where each of these gray lines indicates a sale. So when you have a sale, there are fewer seats left, so you jump to a higher path because there are fewer seats left to sell. And this shows you a couple of things. It shows you that prices are somewhat random, and they kind of spike here at the end just by accident. Sometimes they're high, sometimes they're low. The black line actually indicates what are the average prices. I'm going to make that quit making people nauseous. The black line indicates what the average prices would be. That is, that's what we would expect to see if we observed thousands of flights. So this is what the received wisdom says. The people who actually program it, these are published papers that, in fact, one of the things that gave me a real turn when I first started to research this is that it seemed like every researcher, when they started, they disappeared. They'd be like at University of Chicago, and then all of a sudden they'd be gone. And I was, it's like a John Grisham novel starting. But it turns out, no, they've gone to work for the Sabre Corporation, is what happens next. So this is actually a graph of this is for selling 200 seats. This is a graph of the expected prices prior to sale. This is not necessarily a zero price. This is a graph of the expected prices, is the black line, and you can see it goes up towards the end and then plummets. And then you get this horn-shaped thing, which is actually the 95% confidence interval. That is, we're 95% confident that whatever the prices do, they're staying inside that horn-shaped thing. So the first thing, that's what the theory says. Once I understood the theory, and let me say Jean talked about my commitment to working with the students. There's my co-author. She was a freshman when we started. And here's another picture of her. So that's what the theory says, and that's nothing like what airline prices actually do. And here's an example. This is my favorite example of them all, and I'm only going to show you the one. So this is American 6825, Oakland to Portland, and Alaska 101, Oakland to Portland. And you can see here, these are prices from Orbitz. This is the takeoff day. This day 0 is the takeoff day. The prices for the Alaska flight, these are very close substitutes. They're about $50 less, and they jump up during that day. The American prices go up by $5. What's really weird is even 2 months later, they go up by $5, even though nothing else happened, except for this one spike on this one day. And then the Alaska prices come plummeting down. The American price is pretty steady, and then Alaska jumps up. They almost get in sync, and then they stay in sync pretty close to the end, except for the last 2 days. I don't mean to say this is a typical picture, but it's not an unreasonable picture, and it doesn't look anything like the price path I showed you before. The other thing I want to say about this price path is that these aren't just close substitutes. They're the same flight. This is a code-shared flight, so this is operated by Alaska. So if you go to Orbitz, it says, well, you could buy the Alaska ticket for $90. You could buy the American ticket for $140, code shared on Alaska. It's Alaska 101. It's really mysterious. Who's paying the higher price? Code shared flights are generally a good indication that we don't actually know much about the pricing of airline seats because we're seeing 25% differences. I'm going to jump to the bottom line on these. We're finding that contrary to what all the existing analysis, distinct airports in the same city don't have even vaguely related prices. Prices 1 hour apart, here's the actual picture, 1 hour apart are very different from each other. So notice that these flights they give you the times here, but like they're jumping up and random jumping around. These are flights from the same airport to the same airport within an hour, well, in a 3-hour span. And they're all over the map. And notice this sort of, it's like a kid's scribble. And distinct airlines don't behave at all the same. Search is really beneficial in airline tickets. So if you've got 4 months to plan, don't book your tickets immediately. Watch the prices for a few weeks. Go every day because the prices change on a daily basis. Or they can change on a daily basis. American Airlines changes its fares 500,000 times a day. Prices are changing a lot. Watch for a while, and if you see a price that looks good relative to the prices of the last 3 weeks, that's when you book. Prices go up towards the end in contrast to the theory. And then finally, there's the Machiavellian strategy. If you really want to get a low price like to Europe, book 6 full fare tickets that are fully refundable, and the day before the flight, release them. Okay, we talked about those ads with the coupons. Here's an example of one. I like this because it's better than BOGO. Here it is up close. Buy one, get one free is BOGO, but where's the F? Shouldn't it be BOGOF? So, Smucker's grape jelly, normally $2.50. Here it is, 98 cents. It's going to last for a couple of weeks at 98 cents. It's going to be back to $2.50. So economic theory, I mean, I have a PhD in economics. I teach economics, supply and demand, right? That's what else do you need to know about economics? There wasn't like a grape surplus. There wasn't an announcement by the FDA that, oh, maybe grapes are poisonous. What in the world are they doing at 98 cents? Nothing changed, and the prices dropped to 98 cents, and then boom, they're back up. Turkeys. If you want to buy turkeys cheap, you buy turkeys the week before Thanksgiving. Well, that's when demand is high. What are the prices doing low? Normally high demand, high prices. Why are turkeys cheap then? So this is and if you think about this, if you go in the grocery store, Diet Coke, normally 12 for $5, on sale 3 for $7. Why? There wasn't like, again, it wasn't like, oh, there's an announcement that caffeine is poisonous or caffeine is good for you, whatever. Nothing changed in these markets, and yet prices are bouncing up and down. This ought to seem really mysterious. Does it seem mysterious? Seems like a puzzle. It's got a really simple explanation. Those same coupon clippers and the non-coupon clippers, there are people who actually search for the low price, and there are people who don't, who just go to their local store and don't actually notice the prices. It turns out, if you think about this if you think about it in this environment, if I'm Vons and Ralph's is going to charge $2, I probably want to charge $1.98. But if I'm charging $1.98, Ralph's isn't going to I've already forgotten which way I posed it. So if Ralph's is charging $2 and Vons wants to charge $1.98, Ralph's response to that is not to charge $2. It's either to charge $5 or $1.96. What this means is that if Ralph's can predict what Vons is doing, it's probably going to undercut it, and vice versa. So there can't be stable pricing in which they can predict what the other company is going to do. What they have to do is randomize. And that's, well, it doesn't have to actually literally be random. It has to be unpredictable. And that's the theory of price dispersion. As soon as you have some customers are loyal, some customers shop around for the best price, prices have to be unpredictable to the rivals, because otherwise they're either going to undercut it or they're going to be so high that you would rather not be cheap. So in fact, not only is this not mysterious, it's the way the world has to work, and of course then when we go out and look at it, sure enough it does. Let me show you a couple of conclusions from it. This is as a function of the number of stores. So we talk about these loyal customers. This is as the number of stores gets large. As the number of stores gets large, there are going to be very few with cheap prices, but when they do have cheap prices, they're going to be really cheap. And that means most of the loyal customers get soaked, and the shoppers actually benefit. As a consequence, it's better for loyal customers, that is the customers who don't shop around if there aren't very many stores. And it's better for shoppers if there's lots of variety in stores and lots of stores. So loyal customers benefit from having little competition in contrast to most of what people expect. Here's what happens when you add more shoppers. Shoppers do really good for other shoppers. So this is the proportion of shoppers. When most people are shopping, prices get really low. On the other hand, even just a few loyal customers causes prices to skyrocket, but only to the loyal customers. They don't harm the shoppers nearly so much. If you're a shopper, you're doing a good thing for the rest of society, and that's going to bring me to gas prices. Here's the book Gene mentioned. There's a fairly extensive write-up in that. Okay, so some of the predictions, they're unpredictable prices. You're not going to do this at random. You're going to actually want to give discounts on the things that the price-sensitive customers are buying. That is, the shoppers are buying. So Thanksgiving turkeys are a really good example. Why? Because who buys a lot of Thanksgiving turkeys? It's people who are feeding like 25 people, whereas those dinks, pretty price insensitive, don't need to give them a discount, and they're not buying very many turkeys. So you see them on milk, paper towels, the family sort of stuff, diapers, and you don't see it, potato chips, and you don't see the discounts on Kalamata olives and fancy fish. One of the things that's also true is that the theory predicts a negative correlation over time, and that's because if you have low prices, these shoppers build up inventories and it takes them out of the market. When you see a discount, take advantage of it because it's generally followed by a high price. Okay, what does that have to do with gasoline? Well, so these are the 6 stations. Actually, no, these aren't all 6 of them, but I'm going to show you the 6 stations closest to my house. We went out Saturday. My wife did the photographing. And here are the prices, and the thing I really want to point to is that there's a 14-cent gap. So if you're one of the people who, and here's the actual the summary of it, if you're one of the people who complain about high gas prices, shop. That benefits two ways. One is that if you shop, it forces the gas stations to cut their prices. And when one cuts its price, the others have to respond. It brings all of them down. Now, none of this is going to get us back to $2 gas. The amount of leeway here is on the order of 20 cents, not $1. But on the other hand, there is actually 20 cents of give in the system. Our estimate is that prices are about 20 cents higher here than in the much more competitive Texas market. I want to point to this. Do you see this? 329, next door station 327. Do you think this guy could afford a better car if he shopped around? These stations are literally next door. How can that persist? There's some people who don't shop even when the 2 stations are physically next door to each other. Okay, returns to search are large in this society. There's a lot of price variation if you're observant. Competition may naturally give rise to price volatility. That is to say, the same theory, which you have some people generating, some people searching and some not, actually makes searching profitable. And then searchers convey positive effects on others. Okay, one of the things that I've been researching pricing now for 25 years, there are a lot of mysteries left. And that's one of the things that's really exciting about it. And I've told you mostly about the things that aren't so mysterious, but it's actually quite exciting and interesting. I'm going to leave you, well, you've spoken too long when people quit looking at their watch and start shaking it. So I'm going to leave you with this. This is first-class tickets on U.S. Air, Las Vegas to LAX. One way, first-class ticket. So again, everybody thinks, it's expensive, but there's just a posted fare. Well, no. In fact, price is mostly on the order of $90, bouncing all the way up to $680. Can you imagine sitting next to somebody, you paid, hopefully you're the one who paid $90 and they paid $680? Now, these tickets are all fully refundable, so the person who did pay this fare has the option, if they notice that the fare fell, of cashing in their ticket and buying 6 of them. They could fill the whole first class. Returns to, so most people think, they don't play games with the business tickets. That's just not right. There it is. And we find this consistently for American Airlines, US Air, United, and Delta, not for Northwest. Northwest, pretty much steady pricing. Last point, Everyone says, oh, Southwest doesn't do that. No, Southwest does. They have cute little names for them: fun fares, excursion fares, regular fare. Their prices are, the gap is something like 250% between the cheapest price and the most expensive price. And they do it by making those 6 fares either available or not, depending on whether the prices are high or low. But Southwest engaged in the same sort of behavior. So I'm happy to take questions.